كيف كانت الويكند؟ تمام، انبسطتوا بالمشوار؟ ها؟ عجقة هيدا لبنان. تعالوا بعد 10 سنين ما بيقعد فيك تمشوا على الطريق، بصير باركينج لوت. انبسطت؟ طيب إذا لاحظتوا عددكم اليوم زايد شوي. بدي رحب بمجموعة من الصبايا اللبنانية بمس لبنان. رح يشاركونا على يومين، اليوم وبكرة. I'll say that in English for those who don't have the translation. There is a group of women who are competing in Miss Lebanon who will be joining us for the next couple of days. LAU has committed this year to contributing to elevating and reinventing Miss Lebanon and beauty pageants in general by helping to contribute to the contestants' knowledge, abilities, and intellect. And this is the justification and why they are going to be joining us for the next 2 days. فالجامعة اللبنانية الأمريكية اعتمدت إنه إعادة اختراع أو إعادة ابتكار مس لبنان والمساعدة على تطوير هذا البرنامج من ناحية كمان تطوير صورة المرأة بالمجتمع. رح ننتقل هلا للإنجليزي. I have another announcement. Miss Naya Rai, who was supposed to be delivering this lecture, unfortunately had a medical emergency and apologized last night. So I will be delivering it, although I would have actually preferred that a woman deliver this lecture because it will focus on women's image in the media. And I prefer there be a woman's voice delivering that. Unfortunately, it happened very late at night, and I was the only one there. So. But today we're going to be talking about commodification of beauty, the body, and sexuality. We're going to go through a lot of concepts, some theories, and we'll do them at a dizzying, speedy pace. No, I'm just kidding. But we will go through many concepts. I'll try to engage you as much as I can with questions, and we will leave at least 10-15 questions towards the end. Have you seen this graphic before? The lady in bikini is saying everything covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. The lady in the burqa saying nothing covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. It symbolizes, on one hand, these two different worldviews about attire, about the role of women in society, about body, about image. But at the same time, it also symbolizes the unity in how women are seen in society, regardless of what you wear, regardless of where you are, regardless of your culture. The subjugation of women throughout history and throughout many societies. This was actually brought to a fourth a few years ago during the Olympics when the Egyptian team, one or a few of the players, wore the hijab, and they had to change the laws to do that, and there was a lot of coverage about that. There was no coverage about the bikinis that the other women wore, and it was considered the norm. So this is an introduction to ask you a question about beauty, especially that we have Miss Lebanon contestants with us today. What is beauty and how do we measure it? I'd like to hear 6 short answers, 3 from women and 3 from men. Would that work? Short meaning like 10 seconds to 15 seconds, not 10 minutes, okay? Let's have the hands up. How do we measure beauty?
We actually measure.
You need to wait for the microphone, sorry, just for the translation.
People usually measure beauty from the outside, like as a first impression. But usually beauty is on the inside, which
Okay.
actually makes the reflection what's on
But
the
how
outside.
do you measure?
From the inside.
How do you measure it?
By their personality,
Personality, okay, that's one measure.
respect.
Respect,
Knowledge,
that's another one.
courage.
Knowledge, courage, okay. Anyone else? We have someone over there. We can use the second microphone. I'm going to stick to this microphone. Oh, you have to? Okay.
Okay, beauty can be measured by how much you're willing to help those around you.
Okay. Willingness
So
to help.
Yeah.
Great. Third woman. Okay, now I need 3 men after that. Go ahead.
I think beauty is the way women portray the confidence that they feel on the inside, but on the outside, and it's measured maybe by the way that people measure that confidence, I guess.
Okay, so it's measured by the way that people measure their confidence. That's a very interesting perspective. It's measured by the way people measure your confidence or projection of confidence. I have a male over there who had the courage to speak about beauty.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
لحظة ما عم بفهم.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, first of all, and we can measure it through, by the character itself and by the self-confidence in the one who has beauty.
Okay, so it's in the eye of the beholder. It's
Yes.
subjective. Thank
Yes.
you. Two more answers. For those who are coming in late, do you realize now how disruptive you are? Thank you very much for disrupting our lecture and coming in at 10 minutes or 8 minutes late. Please show up on time. Please come 10 minutes in advance. 2 more males? No 2 males have the courage to say anything? Okay, there's one.
الجمال أول شيء نسبي من الصعب جدا قياسه فبالتالي يعني ما أراه جميل قد لا تراه جميل.
Okay, so there is no measure. It's subjective. It is subjective. One more. Come on. You can do better than that. That's up.
أعتقد برأيي من خلال الثقافة أو الرشاقة.
Okay, ثقافة or?
رشاقة.
Rashaqa. Okay, that's a good way of measuring. Thank you. I know each one of you has a different concept. I just wanted you to start thinking about this. How do we measure beauty? How do we look in the mirror and decide, I am pretty or I am not? I have beauty or I do not? Or I am on a certain scale, right? You watch all these movies. She is 9, he is 10, he is all these things, right? How do we measure that? Is it the height? Is it the weight? Is it all these things? So, before I answer these questions, I'd like to tell you and introduce you to the concept, a few concepts and theories, to tell you that there is actually no objective measure of beauty. Whenever there is no objective measure of anything, that creates a lot of problems. A couple of you got that? It is a subjective assessment. It is a subjective assessment. It is in the eye of the beholder. But the problem with that, it means it is external to you. So your beauty is quite often an external measure of somebody else. And this creates a lot of problems, as we will see as we go. Problems of self-esteem, of self-assessment, of self-worth, and all these matters. So let's just go into theories, just for a few minutes. Humor me here, it's a little bit boring, but let's go into that. There's a theory called social comparison theory. Social comparison theory. It says, in the absence of any other objective external benchmark, people define themselves by comparing themselves to other people in their environment. So if we're talking about speed, we can measure speed by miles or kilometers per hour, right? I'm driving 60, I'm driving 120. 120 is fast, 160 as average, 20 is pretty slow. Get out of my way, right? I am pretty, that doesn't work that much. Beauty, what's the measure? What's the number I can put there? So with social comparison theory, it says that when there is no objective benchmark, when there is no miles per hour or something, people define themselves by comparing. You compare yourself. So Joey is more beautiful than I am, okay? So that's a measure, no? With the mustache and the goatee. Sorry, Joey, you're just the first in front of me. Another theory is sociocultural theory. And it says, pervasive social and cultural values, especially from peer, parental, and media influences, have a tremendous effect on individual values and behaviors. A lot of what I'm going to talk about focus on these two theories today, so I'd like you to keep them in mind. This says that dominant values out there actually affect our perception of reality, and in this case, of beauty, whether it's skin color, whether it's thinness, whether it's hair color, whether it's anything else that is physical. There's one more concept that I'd like you to keep in mind, and this is called symbolic annihilation. Symbolic annihilation. And it is the absence of representation. The absence of representation or underrepresentation of some group of people in the media. It could be a religious group, it could be a racial group, it could be a body type group, it could be a certain skin color group, it could be a certain height group. So this ties into the first theory of sociocultural influences, okay? And just to be clear about all these theories, maybe 20, 30 years ago, institutions like schools, churches, mosques had a great influence on us. Today, the media have the most dominant influence on us. And you can hold me to that word. From the moment you are born till the moment you die, and we've been talking about this for the whole past week, you are surrounded by media, you're submerged in media. And by media, I mean everything that has a commercial, a branded message, any kind of platform. From a cell phone that a 2-year-old child is playing in the back of the car and cannot leave it, and the moment you take it from them, they start crying, to an iPad, to a TV, to the billboards you see on the streets, to the brands you see on your shirts, on your products, on your headphones, on everything. This is a quick assessment of how media are dominant today, especially when it comes to advertising messages, commercial messages. And these are very important because commercial messages are very well crafted to persuade you to do something, usually to buy a product or a service. So the latest studies show that the average person is exposed to 4,000 to 10,000 advertisements per day. Now that's in the US, okay? Maybe in Lebanon it's a little bit less, maybe 3,999, right? Think about, especially those who came from far away today. While you were driving in the car, how many ads did you see? How many billboards did you see? Al Strad. Let's throw in a number, 100? How many commercial messages do you see in this hall? Brands on your clothes, on your computers, on your tools, on that camera. The LAU logo that I put up there, that counts as one too. And what you're going to be watching today. How many times are you going to be checking Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these images, somehow sponsored messages integrated into them? And you will realize that this number is actually not exaggerated. Now, exposure to something and actually focusing and seeing it and reading it is something else, of course, but exposure still does matter. Studies show that a person's exposure of a fraction of a second, 20 fractions of a second, still influence them in a certain way. Influence them to see an object positively or negatively, or reconfirming certain beliefs they have. The average girl will watch about 5,000 hours of TV and 80,000 ads before she reaches kindergarten, around the age of 3 or 4. This is from 2007, this study. So you might as well quadruple that number today. There were no mobile phones and Facebook and social media when this study was actually conducted. Well, there were mobile phones, but not the same way they happen today. Almost all of us know about the stereotypes of women in the media, right? This is predominantly Western media, and a lot of my examples are from Western, specifically US media, which is dominant today. I know a lot of the students in my class mainly follow US media on Apple TV and Netflix. How many of you watch Netflix here? Apple TV. All right, a few of you, good. I'm just assessing what I'm going to be buying next. So the 4 classic stereotypes of woman: the femme fatale, the supermom who can juggle a million things along with her kids, the sex kitten, which is the predominant stereotype today, and the nasty villainess who is evil out there to break men and destroy them. The femme fatale is similar, but she actually attracts men before she destroys them. The two classic stereotypes of Arab women. This is straight out of Edward Said. The submissive, covered woman who has no will, no power, no voice, no words, and the exotic harem. Is that Harem al-Sultan show still going on? It is? Yeah. Okay. Who watches it? Nobody's going to raise their hand. Okay, there you go. And these are some two contradictory images, sometimes actually represented at the same time by the same person. Here's a nice image I saw a few days ago. I am not what I appear to be. Clashing the images of the conservative hijab with the rebel woman with tattoos. I don't know what to make of this, but I'll leave it to you to think about it. But let's go beyond the stereotypes. What I'd like to do today is go through some of the dominant images of women in the media. Going back to the theories that we spoke about. If we are influenced by dominant images around us, especially through the media, and these images create values in our mind to tell us what is beautiful and what is not, then we need to study those. We need to know what are the dominant images out there, right? In order to figure out what is the measure of beauty. Because right now, media are the measure of beauty. Our image in the media is our most influential measure of beauty today. The media normalize beauty. What does the word normalize mean? It means it makes it normal. It makes it feel normal. It is normal for us to wake up in the morning, have breakfast, and go to work, right? This is what society over maybe decades created in us. It is normal for us to wear certain attire. It is normal for a woman to wear high heels, but it is not normal for a man to wear high heels. Where did that come from? From the fashion industry. But there was also a certain need for it, and they created this need. So just to go to understand the concept of normal, a dominant behavior in society. So the first concept, normalizing thinness. Thinness is good. Thinness is pretty. Over the past century, the image of women, especially models, have gone from thin to thinner, with the exceptional one or few years where actually hips were considered attractive. Here's a nice ad that shows 7 sexy styles. There really is a body for every body. This is a commercial that features an average BMI, body mass index. Everybody knows what a body mass index is. You measure your weight, you measure your height, and you divide them over each other, and there's a formula for it, and it will tell you if you have normal weight, if you are above weight or below. If you are anorexic, way below, or if you are morbidly obese, way above. So this ad actually claims that there is a body type for every body. I mean, they might as well be copy-pasted from the same person, and you change the color and the way they are standing. And this possibly could have happened. This is a possibility that this is one body that has been copied and pasted over different women's images. The average of this BMI is 17.1. Normal BMI for human beings, for women and men have different BMI averages, is 18.5 to 24.9. So the norm for models is under the normal, is below the normal. This is what a normal diversity of body images or BMI would actually look like in reality. And more companies, there's some good news there, more and more companies are actually encouraging diversity in body types. More and more shows are including different body types. But we still have a dominant problem. We still have a problem. It ebbs and flows. Every now and then, there's a campaign that goes against thinness, against anorexia. I'll talk about anorexia in a moment. And we put policies in place. So, over time, we have studied how many people can actually be models based on these standards. And the finding is that a young woman has a 7% chance. In every 100 women, there's only 7 out of these 100 women who can be catwalk models. And only 1 in every 100 women can actually be a supermodel based on these standards. And it's not something that you can do anything about. It is something that you are born with. It's your body structure, it's your bone structure, it's your genes. No plastic surgery in the world, no cosmetic products in the world can help with this. The problem had become, in the past few years, so risky for women, for female models, that some fashion shows around the world instituted a certain minimum BMI level. Italy, for example, banned models with BMI less than 18.5. The same occurred in Brazil and Spain, after 2 models died from anorexia, and they were sisters. The pressures that these women face in order to remain thin is incredible. So we talked about models, but models are not everything we watch, right? We barely watch fashion models, but we watch a lot of TV shows. Studies show that over 3/4 of females in TV shows are actually underweight. That's the norm. In the past, they used to say, well, the camera adds a few pounds to you. With HD, that's not necessarily true anymore. Only 1 in 20 actresses were actually above average size. Only 1 in 20. So that's the universe we look at in the media. 3/4 underweight, 1 in 20 overweight. Here's some of your favorite fans, stars. Julia Roberts, a few years ago, not now. And Cameron Diaz had a BMI of 17. Kate Moss, borderline severe anorexia, 16. Those are our idols, right? Whenever we see heavier actresses, studies have found that they are associated with comments about their body, laughter, and canned laughter, meaning fake laughter that is added to the soundtrack. 80% of comments were followed by these canned laughters. So not only do we see a universe of thinness, but also when there is any kind of overweight body, it is associated with laughter, with comedy, and it is mocked. Somebody was saying something? Never. Heavier actresses. I love this actress. My wife and I love watching her comedy shows. The second kind of normalization, youngness. Who wants to watch old women in TV shows and on newscasts, right? Well, actually, studies show that this is a conscious decision. If you look at the TV newscasts that we have today in Lebanon, most of the men are much older than the women. Gray hair, sometimes with beards, sometimes without hair, but the women have to be always impeccable. Perfect hair, 20 to 30-year-olds appearing on camera. The studies show that female characters younger than male characters in general. Men are twice as likely as women to be 50 to 60 years old. Here are some examples from the Arab world. We can go into a lot of details on this and how young our actresses, our anchors in the Arab world are becoming. But let's move to the third concept. Focusing on appearance. Who cares about brains and knowledge and intellect? A classic example from 2002. Greta Van Susteren was one of the most accomplished journalists, a former lawyer at CNN, and she moved to Fox. The first debut of her show after she had undergone plastic surgery and a lot of alterations put her in a miniskirt with a camera moving from lower angle to up, signaling to us that Greta's knowledge, legal expertise, and years of expertise as a journalist, okay, they're important, but they're not important as much as her image. We can go to journalists in Lebanon. We conducted a study a few years ago, and we found the following. 1, female journalism students, okay, in the university. There's 4-to-1 ratio between male and female. For every 4 female students in journalism, there's 1 male. Vast majority of journalism students are female. Move into the industry. 1 to 2 male to female. For every 1 female journalist, there are 2 males. Something wrong is happening when the majority of your journalism students are female, and suddenly in the industry, the ratio reverses. But that's not the whole story. If you go up the hierarchy, go up into management, producers, for example, only 22% are women. Go even further up into ownership and board membership, barely 15% are women. Why is this important? Why am I talking about this? Because who are the people who decide who goes on TV, what news is covered, how a woman's image is portrayed, what is the role of women in the media? It's those board members and owners. I have even further bad news for you. Even those 15%, unfortunately, they barely have any voice. In fact, their names are listed on ownership of media institutions in order to maintain the political control of that institution. Not only the anchors and the actors and the reporters, also the guests, the experts. How many times do you see a female expert appearing on a newscast or a talk show talking about politics? Almost zero. Talking about cosmetics? Maybe. This is from CNN, Fox, MSNBC. 35% were female. 1/3. So this is the universe we hear. Who are the experts? Predominantly male. And we're talking US here. Move to Lebanon, move to the Arab world, you barely see any women experts. So the woman, thin, young, pretty, we're going to move to pretty very soon, but no, we don't really want to hear their opinion and their intellect and their voice. Also in terms of numbers, in terms of TV shows, and this takes us back to the idea of symbolic annihilation. When the universe in front of us removes certain symbols, removes certain groups, these groups not only become minorities in society, become outside of the norm. And eventually we justify treating them in a certain demeaning way. Males outnumbered females nearly 2-to-1 in primetime TV in 2011. In 1970s, it was 3-to-1. And today it's 2.5-to-1. So there's some improvement, but we are not there yet. The new genres of video games are disastrous. 1 in 7 characters in best-selling video games are women. 1 in 7. 40% of these women, almost half of them, are wearing revealing clothing with partially or totally nude. This is the universe that we are looking at. Video games are now the dominant media among kids between the ages of 5 and 12. I have to restrain my 10-year-old child from jumping on his PS4 and spending all day on it. And I'm sure you have all experienced that. This is the image that our children see, women and men. The powerful, look at their stare, look at their muscles, look at their posture. I don't know if I have to comment on the other image. So let me ask you a question. Raise your hand. What is the percentage of family films with a female narrator? A narrator is the voice you hear over a film, right? We all understand what a narrator is. So what is the percentage of family films with a female narrator? Raise your hand if you say 12%. Raise your hand if you say 26%. Raise your hand if you say 32%. 41, 50%. All right. It's 26%. 1/4 of narrators are female. What is the percentage of primetime shows with gender balanced cast, meaning equal men and women cast, main roles? 11%, 22%, 33, 44, 55. It's 22%. 1/5. The vast majority of shows, the vast majority of the media universe that we live in today shows 1/5 balanced gender. What is the percentage of speaking characters in primetime comedies by gender? All right, I'm not going to ask you that. I'm just going to give it to you. Speaking characters, predominantly men. I'm going to talk about the Bechdel test in a moment. A lot of women appear in shows, TV and movies. They don't say anything. We don't even discern what they're saying. The next normalization. Normalization of sexiness. Today, the female body parts in the US sell everything from food to cars. We're much better in Lebanon and the Arab world. The female body parts in Lebanon sell everything from city malls to cable TV shows. Well, stations. These are actual real ads. Look at the sexual innuendo. 2 for $15. Is it two what? 2 women for $15? Or you want or you don't want, and you can see the brands of the TV of the stations on the woman's body. This is an actual ad for a mall in Lebanon. I've been to this mall so many times and I've never seen these security guards, unfortunately. I'm joking. The lottery is owned by the Lebanese government. You do know that, right? So it's not just like private companies. It's also your official government who sees you in a certain way. Although this is not a product of Lebanese or Arab media, this is actually sold and marketed in Lebanon and reproduced in Lebanese magazines. Not only showing women as literal sex objects, but also as slaves. We talk about the concept of objectivity. Objectivity, what does it mean? What does it mean to objectify a person, objectify a woman? I need 3 answers, 3 quick answers. What does it mean to objectify somebody? I have 1, 2, and 3 in the back.
Instead of thinking about them as human beings who have like a certain character and a certain feeling or something, we are seeing them as products with prices. So the more beautiful the person is, the more precious the person is.
Okay. One more. The lady next to you. The lady next to you on the left. On the left. On the left. Oh, sorry. On your right.
Yeah, I would have said the same, and also that they're a tool for certain uses. So. To please men in the end effect. Okay, so using women to please men. One more?
نفس الحديث باختصار هو التسليع، واعتقد اللي بتقوم فيه شركات مستحضرات التجميل دور الازياء من اجل الترويج، والموضوع مرتبط بالامور التجاريه والبزنس. فكل الاعلانات هاي وتحديد مقاييس الجمال ومعايير الجمال للمراه وربطها الجمال بالمراه الاوروبيه على سبيل المثال، حتى تشعر المراه اللي في الدول الناميه بجزء من النقص وبالمقارنه مع هاي المراه، فتضطر تلجا بزياده لمستحضرات التجميل، لعمليات التجميل، لدور الازياء، لحتى توصل لمعيار الاناقه اللي حددوه.
Thank you. You captured that concept. There's nothing wrong with objectifying a person. People look at me, huh? There's nothing wrong with objectifying a person. There's nothing wrong with sexually objectifying a person, right? Because as human beings, like our colleague said, we are complex. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a professor, I'm a former journalist, I'm an athlete, I like to eat. There are so many things I can say about myself, right? I am also a sexual being, right? My wife and I, we objectify each other sexually. But I also see my wife as a professional, as a doctor, as a powerful activist, as a politician, as a mother, etc., etc., etc. So there is this one dimension for a human being that is a sexual object. The problem with the media is that it reduces this complexity to one dimension, and it's the dominant dimension. The sexual object becomes the one and only one dimension, which takes us back centuries, where we see women as only this one or two roles in society. Mother, working in the kitchen, and sex. That's it. And this is the problem with sexual objectification, when we do not reveal the multi-dimensions of a person. In some cases, the ads, the one for BMW is an actual real ad. You know you're not the first, but do you really care? This is an ad for used cars. So this one was a mock, it's fake, but still, it actually was distributed widely. Again, it's not just the private companies, the commercial companies that want to sell, who are using this kind of portrayal of women. The first time I came to Lebanon, I was flying Middle East Airlines, and we were landing, and the crazy video appeared on the screen. I don't know if any of you have seen it yet, or have seen it in the past. This is a video sponsored and created by the Ministry of Tourism. I captured it on my cell phone, so the image is a little bit wobbly, and there's no sound. That's the sound of the plane. Wait for it, there's one more, there's one more. And here we go. Just in case half-naked women, alcohol and gambling is not enough for you, this is what Lebanon is in the eyes of the Lebanese government. Well, to be fair to the Lebanese government, although I don't think they deserve to be fair for it, there was a new commercial campaign, and one of our students actually spearheaded that after a lot of criticism. His name is Farah. He participated in the Salisbury Academy. He has taken a lot of media literacy classes, and this was the most recent campaign.
بيقولوا ما بيسوى نقعد بالشمس،
بس في أحلى من الشمس. بيقولوا كترة الأكل بتضر،
بس في أحلى من الأكل. بيقولوا ما لازم نتأخر بالليل،
بس في أحلى من السهر. بيقولوا بعدوا عن الخلافات.
بس في أحلى من الديمقراطية. بيقولوا تجنبوا لبنان.
ليش في أحلى من لبنان؟
So a little bit better. They didn't include the trash and the traffic and all the pollution and all the other things, but at least a little bit better. But you know, going back to these two videos, two of those actually are shot in Lebanon. They were not, acted for the camera. They reflect some form of reality. We're not saying that there are no nightclubs like that, there are no gambling places like that Lebanon is not one of the top Arab countries to accept plastic surgery tourism. But that is not just what Lebanon is. This is the problem with reducing the country to this one or few dimensions. And this creates a lot of problems. Everybody knows what are the stereotypes of the Lebanese woman in the Arab world. And this creates a lot of sexual harassments, a lot of problems for Lebanese women all across the Arab world. It's not something that is benign. Moving on, normalizing beauty, domesticness, and subservience. Here are some commercials that show women. Okay, this is an old one from the 1950s, right? This is actually from 2013. Men, please do not buy vacuum cleaners and washing machine for your mothers or wives. And if you do, I hope they do slam you in the head with them. This is from 1970, and this is from 2015. Sure, I'm exaggerating. There's a lot more images today in advertisement that show women that are empowered, but the stereotypes are still there, are still dominant, and it's very hard to shake them off. They're focusing on the physical, on the thinness. So, chocolate will make her fat. Give unexpected gifts this Valentine's. So, I don't want to criticize Khoury Home. It's their job to sell products, and they're trying to their best to sell it in whatever way they see it. Just imagine the people who are producing these ads, what culture they're coming from, what mentality they come from, and how they see women. And this is what recreates these problems in society. So moving to something that is more fun than science, the Bechdel test. This started in a comic strip that assessed movies based on 3 questions. What is the percentage of movies that have at least two women who talk to each other about something other than another man? You'll be very surprised to find out that in the past few decades, barely 50% of these movies passed this test. You can go to the website, 2016, it was actually approximately 50%. 2017, it was better. Now that we're actually shaming the movie industry, especially Hollywood, you can go to bechdeltest.com. You can also include some of the Lebanese movies in there, and they will count them for you. The same cover of a magazine, one will come to Lebanon, another one will go to, Emirates. And you'll see, okay, it's a little bit more conservative, nice, respecting women. What the hell is that woman selling? Toys for kids? Why is she there? Why is she wearing high heels? Thoughtless advertisements that just slap women on advertisement with the idea that, sex sells. Sex sells, let's just put sex on the ads. In fact, one of the scholars, his name is, I can't recall his name, studied over decades the power of sex sells and found that, sex sells in certain circumstances. When you are actually selling products related to sex, like lingerie or other things, when you are selling it in a subtle way, not in this obnoxious, crude way, and when you actually don't overwhelm the audience with that product because it will create a backlash. But we continue to sexualize our stars, our idols, our singers, our actors. Just try to compare the image of Wa'il Kfouri to the image of Haifa. What is she doing with this phone, with this Pepsi? What is he doing with it? Look at the image that we always see about a woman. Why is she leaning at the wall like that? It's the decision of the photographer, right? This is the photo that I snapped in one of the malls in Lebanon, one of the ABC malls. Right next to it is a child's playground. This is what we do when we talk about sexual objectification. Okay, they're selling lingerie, that's fine, but does she have to be in this sexual position in order to sell? I'm sure many of you have seen these always the male gaze. It's always the male gaze. The male is looking and the woman is presenting herself to the man. Whether there is a male or there is no male in the picture. This again goes back to the sexual objectification of women. Why do we emphasize so much the sexual objectification? Does it actually have problems? Does it actually create problems for us? Let's hear from the experts.
It's the and lastly, provides you a plan of action so that you can both navigate objectification culture and change objectification culture. So let's jump right in. What is sexual objectification? It's the process of representing or treating a person like a sex object, one that serves another sexual pleasure. And what's so interesting about sexual objectification is we used to have a vocabulary for it. In the 60s and 70s, we were concerned about sexual objectification and its harm on girls and women. In the 80s, 90s, and today, we've actually been relatively quiet when it comes to public discourse. And so even though our sexual objectification culture is more amplified, we see more images, and 96% of them are female, of sexually objectified bodies. We don't have a vocabulary to talk about it. And in fact, young people, I think, have even mostly lost the ability to identify it. As a friend of mine said, it's like being raised in a red room, pulled out of that red room, and asked to describe the color red. So I built on the work of others, and I put together a sex object test. And if the answer is yes to any of these 7 questions, then you are looking at a sexually objectifying image. First, does the image show only parts of a sexualized person's body? In other words, does a part stand in for the whole? This woman's derriere, for example, in this advertisement. Does the image present a sexualized person as a stand-in for an object? In this image, a woman becomes a table. Does the image show a sexualized person as interchangeable? That is, as one of many items that can just be swapped out. Does the image affirm the idea of violating the bodily integrity of a sexualized person and that person can't consent? In other words, is that person being acted upon as though she is a sexual object? Does the image suggest that the sexual availability of the person is the defining characteristic of that person? And the text for this ad reads, "You know you're not her first, but do you really care?" And it's being used to sell pre-owned vehicles. Does the image show a sexualized person as a commodity, something that can be bought and sold? In this advertisement, you see women in a vending machine and a man is choosing a woman. And this is to sell men's shoes. And lastly, does the image treat a sexualized person's body as a canvas? And I'm not talking about inking or tattooing that a person decides, but rather marketers using the body as a specific type of canvas.
Just to save time.
Internalize this idea. It has some pretty severe effects. I'm going to run through the list, but I want to concentrate on just a few of these items. First, the more we think of ourselves and internalize this idea of being sex objects, the higher our rates of depression. We also engage in habitual body monitoring much more when we view ourselves as sex objects. What is habitual body monitoring? The men in the audience, this might be news to you. It is not news to the women in the audience. We think about the positioning of our legs, the positioning of our hair, where the light is falling, who's looking at us, who's not looking at us. In fact, in the 5 minutes that I've been giving this talk, on average, the women in this audience have engaged in habitual body monitoring 10 times. That is every 30 seconds. Eating disorders are much more prevalent with those who see themselves as sex objects, as well as body shame and depressed cognitive functioning. If we're engaging in habitual body monitoring, it simply takes up more mental space that could be better used completing math tests, completing your homework. It just sucks our cognitive functioning. Also, sexual dysfunction. So this idea that sex sells, isn't it strange that if you think of yourself as a sex object, and we're raised in a society that raises little girls to view their bodies as projects to work on and be sex objects, that it actually gets in the way of good sex? So what tends to happen is that women who are high self-objectifiers actually engage in what's called spectatoring during sex acts. So instead of being involved and engaged in the pleasure and what's happening, you tend to view yourself from a third-party perspective, a spectator's perspective, where you're worried about rolls of fat hanging out, what that leg looks like. So again, it gets in the way of sexual pleasure. So if there's anything I can pitch to you about why you don't want to live in a culture that sexually objectifies, it diminishes your sexual pleasure. It also lowers self-esteem, it lowers GPAs, and it's not negligible. The difference that I found in my research is the difference between going to graduate school and not going to graduate school for college women.
That's quite an intense statement. The difference between going to graduate school and not going to graduate school, if you self-objectify. But let me move beyond sexiness. Actually, it's within sexiness, but it's done for sexiness. Let's talk about plasticness. You have a question? Quickly, but we need a microphone.
I just want to add something that, whatever she said is true, but I mean, just the idea of sexually objectifying a woman is the problem in itself. It doesn't have to do with depression or how the woman treats herself or anything. I mean, she just kind of didn't mention the actual point that this gaze on women is the problem, and not how it affects women.
What she's saying is that if you don't accept what you are saying, that objectification in itself is a problem, take some of the medical science and see, like, self-objectification and objectification actually reduces your pleasure of sex. It just baffles the mind, right? And create all these kinds of depression, less education or less chance of education. So plasticness. I know many of you have never heard of that and never seen in Lebanon or in the Arab world anyone with plastic surgery. I struggle to pass a day without seeing that. And I'm not criticizing plastic surgery, cosmetic surgery. I will say why in a moment. One of our colleagues studied plastic surgery in Lebanon, and she interviewed many women who have undergone cosmetic surgery and surveyed a lot of women in Lebanon, and she found that local plastic surgeons say the following: most of their clients consider Haifa Wahbi and Nancy Ajram as the ideal Lebanese beauty. This is why most women in Lebanon look like Haifa Wahbi and Nancy Ajram. I'm exaggerating. Well, this is her before and after. In fact, unfortunately, most of our idols, most of our actors, singers have actually undergone drastic plastic surgery. Also, the ads and the culture in Lebanon tends to feed into this culture and glamorize it. Here, 3 different advertisements, one for CNF, one for alcohol, and one for Crep Away. Come as you are, right? You will see these ads almost all over the place, online and offline. The woman here is literally a construction site. The The woman's body is something to be improved. Like a building, you construct it, you build it. You can get in Lebanon grants for plastic surgery and probably not for education. This is an ad that I actually caught on my Facebook feed. And it says the following: reshape your nose, reshape your life. This is how powerful the message is today. And if you think that plastic surgery is just this thing that I'm not going to do, or it's only a small minority who can afford it, or something like that, you would be very wrong. The whole psychological pressure, cultural pressure from family, from the media, from friends in society, and I'm not only talking Lebanon. Jordan, your second country in the Arab world, so don't brag about it too much, okay? Iran is even higher. The US, of course, is the first country when it comes to cosmetic surgery. But the pressures that are put on women and men now in our society to undergo these extreme procedures is intense. And again, I'm not trying to criticize or judge those who want to undergo or those who already underwent plastic surgery. My only question that I will raise, ask yourself why? Why do I have this psychological pressure? Why do I feel that I have to do this? What is the value of this? Where is it coming from? Is it coming from my parents? Is it coming from my peers, from my brothers and sisters, from my friends? Is it coming from the media? And probably the answer is all of the above. And is it worth it? Because some of the things that we almost always ignore about plastic surgery are two: the side effects and the risks. And the second one is, will we actually feel better after we do that? Or will we want more and more and more? The survey that Sarah Malat, one of our colleagues, studied found that 99% of women either agreed with the following statement: Lebanese social values promote cosmetic surgery. Agreed or somewhat agreed. What is the top 3 procedures among 18 to 24-year-olds in Lebanon? Raise your hand if you think it's liposuction, nose jobs, and breast enhancement. Raise your hand if you think it's eye lifts, nose job, and facelifts. Raise your hand if you think it's Botox, nose job, breast lip enhancement. Raise your hand if you think it's eye lifts, nose job, and butt implants. Raise your hand if you think it's facelifts, Botox, and liposuction. It's actually the first one: liposuction, nose job, breast enhancements. And this is on a very somber note. Several women in the past couple of years have actually died. An Iraqi woman and a Lebanese woman just in the past year. And there's huge legal proceedings after that due to botched liposuction procedures. Both of those is because the doctor allegedly used too high of a dose of anesthesia, for anesthesia. It's not also a coincidence that all these plastic surgeries becoming so much popular, especially in the US. If you think you can correlate when all these shows about makeovers emerged in the US and the increase, a huge jump, 44% increase in the number of cosmetic procedures. What are the risks of cosmetic surgery? I'm going to read this because I don't understand half of it, but it sounds terrifyingly scary. Complications can occur even in the best of hands. Hematoma and bruises, seroma formation, nerve damage causing sensory or motor loss, infection, scarring, blood loss, and complications of anesthesia can occur in any surgery. Any surgery. More serious complications such as deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism can cause death. So again, not trying to judge here, but trying to ask you to be informed about these things and ask yourself, why is it worth it? Will I actually feel better? Another concept, normalizing beauty. So all these images that we see young women, we see thin women, we see sexy women, we see a lot of culture that encourages plastic surgery, we see domestic women, but all of these images, of course, are fake, but that's not the point. These images are unattainable even by the women who are representing them in the media. Anyone here know Philippa Hamilton? So Philippa Hamilton is 5'10", about 178 centimeters. I'm about 183, so around this height. She's 120 pounds. I'm about 200 pounds. She's size 4, okay? So try to imagine. This is what Ralph Lauren did to her. Still felt the urge of making her thinner. And at one point she lost her contract because she refused to lose weight. We all know this by now. This used to be news. Almost everything we see on magazines, on newspapers, in billboards, on TV, even videos, are somehow altered. The colors, the shape. You've all seen the video campaign from Dove, right? I'm not going to show it to you. I'm going to show you a different one. One of the reasons we teach you Pixlr or Photoshop in this academy is not to be able to do that, but to appreciate how easy actually it is to do that today. Not a single image, I would claim not a single image you see in the media today has not undergone some kind of alteration. In fact, there's a company whose marketing campaign, all they did is put images up there saying what the Photoshop effects that they put in, and maybe a few of the images were not Photoshopped. But that's not the whole story. Even before Photoshop, even before the camera is clicked, there's so much cosmetic and preparation that goes into that. There's so much selection. And the selection, in almost 95% of the time, is one type of body, one color, one skin color, and one certain dominant shape. My computer is beeping. So let's ask ourselves, why are the media standards so high? I mean, if you think about the theories we spoke about earlier, social comparison theory, if we dare compare ourselves to what we see in this media environment that is surrounding us, that we're drowning in, okay? And the standard is not so high, not just high. Remember the models? 1 in 7 or 1 in 100 could be supermodels, right? If even the normal people who look in media, the way we actually see them in real life, it's so unattainable through selectivity. And then the images that we actually see are even unattainable by these same women who are selected and undergone so much beautification. We have to ask ourselves why. Why are the media obsessed with this unattainable image? Let me get a few questions here. Let me get again 5 short answers. 5 short answers. Why is that? We have somebody in the back.
Maybe for advertisement purposes and higher sales.
For advertisement and higher
Hello.
sales.
Yeah.
Okay.
For advertisement and higher sale purposes.
Okay. Thank you. Can I get 2 more? Sorry, 4 more. Yeah.
To create a global citizen.
To create a global
citizen.
A
have the
global
same
citizen.
purchase behavior.
Okay. So to create one image of a person all around the world?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the norm we get used to it, so it's not attractive anymore. So I think if they have something that's exaggerated, so it's going to be attractive for us to look at and to be affected by.
So to attract us.
Yeah.
Okay. Two more answers. Let's have some people who haven't spoken yet. Someone in the back, please.
So I asked myself this question quite a lot of times, to be honest. And as we saw earlier, models like back then used to be curvier, they used to be bigger. So how it came to be that the skinnier is the new beauty? I think somebody's pushing an agenda. I think there is a company who somewhat is profiting from that, maybe back then, even still now, and they place their agenda on society, like it was smoking back then. So it's the cool thing to smoke, for women to smoke. You're an independent woman if you're smoking.
Somebody has an agenda.
Yes.
Yeah. One more. Somebody who hasn't spoken yet, please, back there.
Because there are many industries who are feeding on the insecurities they create inside women. Makeup companies, plastic surgeons, etc.
People are benefiting from this, right? People are benefiting from this. A lot of you had very powerful answers. I just looked up these numbers this morning. The diet industry in the US alone today is $70 billion, 70 billion with a B. The cosmetic surgery industry is 60 billion, only in the US. That's 2016 numbers. And it's projected to hit 50 billion in the next 10 years, in 10 years from now. The cosmetic products industry is $533 billion. That's a global number. Approximately 1/3 of that money goes to advertising these products. You do the calculations. About $200 billion goes towards advertising products. Products that tell you, you're not perfect, you have problems, you should do this and do that in order to look beautiful, in order to look normal, the media normal. By the way, just to put this in context, the GDP of Saudi Arabia is 646 billion. So these industries, that should say GDP, not US GDP. Although maybe actually that's not too wrong. So there is an agenda, right? It's not a conspiracy. It's not somebody wanting to make us look all the same. It's somebody who's making money off of us. Hundreds and hundreds of studies have shown that playing on the insecurities of people actually is a motivation to sell you something. Whether it's to sell you a procedure, a cosmetic surgery procedure, or to sell you a product. All right, now my computer has frozen. Hold on one second. In fact, some of the studies have shown that these insecurities not only sell you, but also lower your self-esteem, lower your self-worth, and lower your satisfaction with yourself and with life in general. A woman's body is always an object to be perfected. That's the message. Women always need adjustment. If you think of the totality of the message, here are some studies that I picked out. People shown slides of thin models had lower self-evaluation than those shown average of oversized models. You can do that study. Most girls reported that very thin models made them feel insecure about themselves. There's also not just psychological problems, there's also physical health problems. Women who are obsessed or become obsessed with thinness almost lead themselves to the path of anorexia. Anorexia is a psychological case where a person, no matter how thin they become, do not see themselves as thin enough.
saddest part is those who have it don't see it. Help them find help.
Anorexia is becoming more and more a problem in Arab society too. Unfortunately, there are no national or regional institutions that actually have numbers to tell us how extensive that problem is. We rely a lot on studies from the US. 75% of normal weight women in one study thought that they were overweight. 3/4 of women who are normal weight thought they are overweight. 90% of women overestimate their body size. There was a campaign by Dove, and let me critique Dove for a moment here because it is a company that is trying to sell us product, but they rode on this campaign that somehow had some benefit thanks to all the criticism and all the campaigning and all this movement to change the culture.
I'm a forensic artist, worked for the San Jose Police Department from 1995 to 2011.
I showed up to a place I'd never been, and there was a guy with a drafting board.
We couldn't see them, they couldn't see us.
Tell me about your hair.
I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
It kind of protrudes a little bit, especially when I smile.
Your jaw.
My mom told me I had a big jaw.
What would be your most prominent feature?
Kind of have a fat, rounder face.
The older I've gotten, the more freckles I've gotten.
I would say I have a pretty big forehead.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and then they leave. I don't see them.
All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this other woman, Chloe.
Today I'm going to ask you some questions about a person you met earlier, and I'm going to ask you some general questions about their face.
She was thin, so you could see her cheekbones. And her chin, it was a nice, thin chin.
She had nice eyes. They lit up when she spoke.
Cute nose.
She had blue eyes, very nice blue eyes.
So here we are. This is the sketch that you helped me create, and that's a sketch that somebody described of you.
So yeah, that's...
She looks closed off and fatter, sadder too. The second one looks more open, friendly, and happy.
I should be more grateful of my natural beauty. It impacts the choices and the friends that we make, the jobs we apply for, how we treat our children. It impacts everything. It couldn't be more critical to your happiness.
Do you think you're more beautiful than you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I use these videos more as metaphor than as scientific examples. And I know this lecture has focused mainly on women's image, but there are many, many also problems with men's image in the media. So I'm not going to dedicate too much time for that. That could be a separate whole lecture. We did conduct a study in Lebanon a few years ago, and we found that many men who go to gyms are obsessed with their muscular structure, what we call sometimes muscle dysmorphia. Think about it as the opposite of anorexia, where no matter how big a person becomes, they still feel they are not big enough and they need some help to become more buff. We found that almost 11% of gym goers in Lebanon use steroids, almost 20% use creatine, and 40% use protein. Just very quickly, some of the side effects of steroids. Severe acne, testicular atrophy, reduced sperm counts, stunted growth, increased risk of stroke, kidney and liver failure, high blood pressure, enlargement of the heart, various cardiovascular problems, mood swings, elevated aggression, and other psychiatric disorders. You know what was one of the most interesting findings in this study? that the men who use steroids, the majority of them have already gone to the hospitals and know the risks and are still doing it. This is the power of image. You know, the other funny thing is that most of the men, we surveyed men and women, most of the men believe that this kind of body is actually attractive to women. Most of the women were disgusted by that. This is where media literacy comes in. So going back to that objectification, it is wrong in itself, right? But it is also wrong for other self-interest reasons. I'm going to skip the stereotypes of men. I just want to highlight one concept when it comes to representation of men in society, especially in our media. This toxic masculinity, this pressure on men to be strong and powerful and confident and the man of the house and the breadwinner and all of these matters. Just think about these for a moment and think how much pressure both our culture and our media are putting on our men in society. And the results, men tend to die younger, on average 10 years younger than men, due to low self-care. I could not convince my father to go and do a blood test. He's 75. Twice as likely to suffer from age disorders, more likely to abuse alcohol, drugs, and engage in risky behaviors, more likely to kill or be killed. 90% of all murders are committed by men today. 77% of murder victims are men, and 80% of suicides. But let me move away from men and get back to the portrayal of women and what the risks are. The final concept we want to talk about today. Normalizing beauty all the way down to its extreme, to the rape culture that we live in today. Has anyone heard that term before, rape culture? Can I get just three short definitions how you see and what you understand rape culture to be? Very short. 3. Anyone raise your hand? These are actual ads. These are actual advertisements. Someone in the back? Go ahead, yeah, sorry. We can take both of you. The microphone's not working? Handheld microphone?
Thank you. So my take on it is basically forcing a woman into a sexual situation and using force to do so, or its representation.
Okay, thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Using women as like a sexual object in all ads, just for attraction.
Okay, one more? There's one here.
I think it's when sexual assault is more normalized,
okay,
and when the action itself becomes more trivial, like, you know, it's something that happens, and to an extent that makes the victim sometimes question if that was something that should be reported or not.
The victim becomes at fault, right? How many of you have brothers and sisters in the family, and the brothers are allowed to go out, but the women, oh no, you're going to be attacked. It's not you might be attacked, you're going to be attacked, right? And the fear is always, well, you're going to be raped, right? This is what rape culture, way beyond objectification, way beyond sexualization. It is the expectation that a woman in public is going to be raped, especially in certain circumstances, and she's not going to only be the victim, she's actually at fault for that. Here's the definition. In a rape culture, people are surrounded with images, language, laws, and everyday phenomena that validate the perpetual rape. You know, in Lebanon, up until a few years ago, if a man rapes a woman and then marries her, it's okay, he's forgiven. In some other Arab countries, that still is the law, in many countries around the world. Rape culture includes jokes, TV, music, advertisement, legal jargon, laws, words, and imagery that make violence against women and sexual coercion seem so normal that people believe that rape is inevitable. It's going to happen. It's not a matter of Is it or is it not? It's going to happen. It's a matter of when. The persistence of rape culture becomes just the way things are. So I would claim that all these images, all this obsession with beauty, the side effect of all these companies selling us products and playing on our insecurities, pushing us towards sexualizing ourselves, leads to this and encourages this culture. The rape culture is not something that was created or invented in the media. It is part of many cultures, but it is being recreated. If you think that rape culture is a joke, let me give you some statistics. In the USA alone, we don't have, unfortunately, in Lebanon, the Arab world. Every time sexual harassment and rape culture is discussed in Arab media, the criticism of it that, oh, no, we don't have that. No. 20% of reported rapes in the US are prosecuted. 20%. 50% of all rapes are not reported because of the shame and stigma that are associated with that. I'm talking in the USA, I'm not talking in Lebanon or the Arab world. 3% of rapes lead to jail time for the rapist. 25% of rapes in the US military, not US society, have been prosecuted. Less than half of those resulted in convictions. So not to give you just this gloomy lecture, I don't want to also mislead you into thinking there's nobody out there, it's hopeless, but there is a huge movement both in Lebanon, in the Arab world, and globally that is pushing back against all these matters. I'm using the Me Too movement, which also Anna spoke about briefly in her lecture, just to symbolize what has happened in the past few years. This exposure of men in power who are sexually harassing women, thanks to this rape culture that allows it, thanks to this culture that stigmatizes women and keeps them silent and not reporting it, but not anymore. In addition to that, in the past 20 years, there have been a lot of improvements. Strides in how many women are actually portrayed in the media, both in Lebanon and the Arab world and globally. More women are behind the scenes, producers and managers, having a say in it. Not enough, but more. There are more watchdog groups. In Lebanon, there's a group called Female that actually monitors advertisements, and quite often when an advertising objectifies a woman or is offensive, they launch a campaign against it, and at least 3 instances that I know about, these campaigns were halted. More public awareness and discussion about these issues and new avenues for research on these matters. There's also diversity in body shape, in color, a little bit more. I don't want to exaggerate the positive, a little bit more. Here's a quote: if you don't see a clear path for what you want sometimes, you have to make it yourself. Mindy Kaling. There's also more representation of the symbolically annihilated groups in society, LGBT community, which we will have somebody today on a panel talking about. And also, one of the latest news, since we have Miss Lebanon participants today, because of the scandals that happened with Miss America, where emails were captured from board members and the chairman of the board of Miss America using lewd terms and offensive terms to portray and to describe these women. The whole board actually ended up resigning, and there's a woman that was put in place. And for the first time in its history, it's almost 100 years old, since 1921, there will be no more swimsuit and evening gown competitions. You can read all about this. There's a huge controversy now going on. It's going to be in September, and you can get all the updates about that. So I'm going to end here and leave a few minutes for any questions. Go ahead, please.
My question, I would like to know your opinion about the Instagram influencers who are sort of these everyday, girl next door, boy next door people, but they take these perfect shots and they use them to sell products. And what do you think of this kind of phenomenon? And the other question is about the idea that women or even men have internalized this objectification. So if I control my nudity, if I put on, online or on Facebook or on Instagram, my photos being naked or something like that, this is empowering to me. So what do you think of these two points?
Thank you. So two very quick things. These influencers, a lot of them are being paid, especially the YouTubers. There was a lecture at the Salzburg Academy by Jamie Cohen, and he shows how much money they make. Once you hit a certain number of followers and a certain level of exposure, companies and brands start coming to you and start giving you products to use. Usually these influencers don't even disclose that they're actually doing that. Some of them do, some of them don't. So there's a whole lot of money being thrown at that. Nudity is not necessarily sexual objectification. Nudity can be empowering. In fact, a nice theoretical debate today about selfies. On one hand, the narcissistic image of the obsession with the oneself, right? But on the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, the empowered person who is in control of their image. Try to imagine the camera 100 years ago, where you had to plan the whole family and you bring the camera person and you have this one shot, right? And now you can take it and you can take any angle you want. Of course, we can talk a lot about selfies and the obsession with, you look at one, if you analyze your images on Facebook, you'll see that 90% of your images are from one angle, because you somehow believe that this angle will make you look the prettiest, right? But again, going back to this idea that nudity, that the body, a person should have power over their body. In our societies, in most societies around the world, the woman's body is not her own. There are rules that regulate it. The men's body, you can go up shirtless. I mean, as long as you don't reveal under the belt, you're fine. You can look, you can do whatever you want. But the woman, oh, wait, no. It's the honor of the family, it's the honor of society, it's all of these things. Nudity and sexual objectification just are not the same thing. Go ahead.
In a world that focuses on the beauty of a woman so much, how can we encourage young girls to focus on their intellect, knowing that if they didn't focus so much on their beauty, they might be shunned by their peers? And we all know the effects of peer pressure.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, this is one of the main purposes of this academy, one of the main purposes of media literacy, to create this movement, to actually support the movements that are out there that are pushing for the change of image of women in society and in the media. One, if you remember the statistics, there are barely any women in power when it comes to media. We need more women in power in the media. We need more women who actually own and control media institutions, who have a say in how women are portrayed in the media and how men are portrayed in society. We need more activists who will push this idea. We need more media literacy education from kindergarten to show how unattainable this kind of image is and what are the financial and economic interests behind it. These people are making millions and billions of dollars, don't care about you and me, right? So all of these kinds of media literacy education, awareness, more women in power, more enlightened men in power too, to change this image. And I can go on and on and on. Okay, let's have some here. Okay, we'll have 3 more questions and we have to end. Yes.
Yeah, I totally second what you've been saying throughout the whole lecture, but we've been focusing on the examples where media was doing it wrong. Can I give you 2 weird situations in which media was doing it right, but the social norms were
Go ahead. Yeah.
contradicting them? First of all, in Jamaica, there is black women don't have any chance to lead any happy life or comforting life. So they usually resort to bleaching themselves with chemicals, and they get burns all the time, and a lot of them are dying every year. And although media are trying all the time to make campaigns all the time, and a lot of my German friends were going there and trying to film things and public service announcements, and they are like shown to those people, people will never stop doing this because it's a life or death, like more thing for them. Secondly, Amy Schumer, for example, had like a really recent movie called I Feel Pretty, and she was like discussing how normal women can reinforce their self-confidence and their talents instead of reinforcing their shape. Actually, when she posted a poster of the movie on her Instagram account, because I'm a big fan of her actually, she got like waves of criticism and hate speech from people, and they were like telling her, who are you to talk about beauty? You have nothing to do with beauty. Although she was trying to fix this image, people are not accepting it. So sometimes it's a societal problem, not like media problem.
Absolutely, thank you. Change is difficult and change is slow, but there is change that is happening. And the people, the activists who have been working on this have been working for decades, not just yesterday. The Me Too campaign is not the only thing that is happening around the world now. In fact, it got a lot of exposure because of sexual harassment, but there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of empowerment of women who are helping women. The two things that I forgot to answer the colleague up there, we need a lot of research on this to understand, especially in our Arab context. And the second thing, other than media literacy courses and education, in fact, in our department at LAU, we have a course on communication and gender. And LAU has a diploma and a master in gender studies. We need more and more people who understand the issues, research them, and promote the right images in society. Go ahead. Or the diverse images in society. There's one more there. We said just 2 quick questions and we will end, okay?
So I want to ask about the aspect of women trying to be more beautiful for men to like them. Because where I come from, I'm from Eastern Europe, this is a huge problem. Women go to extremes just so they could be liked by men. And I want to know how this resonates with everybody.
Sure. Can I get the question next to you? And I'll answer both of them. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to point out another example from German media. And it was a women's magazine that's more targeted towards, say, middle-aged women, but it's like a very prominent women's magazine. And they made a decision to no longer put professional models on their covers, and instead to have pictures of regular women. But in the end, like being a positive initiative and being applauded by many, it turned out many women felt pressure rising because normal, non-model women could look so good on a cover, and so they ended it. And that, for me, that's a point about how, for many, it's also very important to see what's considered normal, not so much what's considered ideal beauty, but what's the standard of being like just normal.
Exactly. So very quick answers. Beauty is not wrong. Physical beauty is not wrong. The wrong is that when we have one type of physical beauty that is also unattainable, right? Physical beauty can reveal itself in so many millions of ways. And we need to spread this kind of idea in society. The media should not tell us what beauty is. We should have the intellect, the critical thinking to understand that this is an unattainable image that is used to play on our insecurities to sell us products. The one area of emerging studies, that's to answer the second question, is that some of these new methods of advertising of using quote-unquote normal people or diverse body types is actually working. Somehow the science is not aligned with what the traditional marketers have been using in the past. It seems that sex sells and this unattainable beauty sells is not based on scientific evidence. And it seems that actually diversity sells. That when I identify myself with a certain body type that is glamorized on a magazine or a TV show, it actually attracts me to buy something, as opposed to altering myself to live up to that level. So, in favor of time, we've gone over 6 minutes over. There's a coffee break, and we'll come back for a panel discussion on media minorities and the marginalized. Thank you very much.